Hey guys, so this is our very last lesson with systems of equations, which is our last unit this year as well. You'll see a couple other little videos that I'll post next week just to kind of look at some topics that will be helpful for you moving forward. But today we're just going to focus on this. So we have modeling with systems of equations, which is basically a fancy name for word problems. Don't be afraid of word problems. They're really not that bad. So here's some steps. I actually remembered to put the steps down this time so you don't have to write them in. So define each variable. So basically there's going to be two variables for each problem. Tell me what letter you're going to use. All right. You're going to set up two equations and then you're going to solve using one of the methods we learned. Remember, we learned graphing. We learned substitution. And we learned elimination, which is the same as adding. This one is probably the one that we'll use the most, and you'll see this a lot when you get to Algebra 2 as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, obviously, read through the problem. And you might say, well, I can figure this out without an equation. Maybe so, but sometimes it could take you a really long time. So this is more efficient, and it's a good skill to have. So Samantha went to a concession stand and bought 3 pretzels and 4 sodas and paid a total of $11.25 for them. Raza went to the same stand and bought 5 pretzels and 2 sodas and paid a total of $8.25. Write and solve a system of equations to determine the cost of 1 pretzel and the cost of 1 soda. So the first thing I want to do is highlight some things. So let's find our key information. So Samantha, let me highlight. There we go. Went to the concession stand and bought 3 pretzels and 4 sodas, and she paid a total of $11.25. So let's start there. All right. The 2 variables that we have are pretzels and sodas. So I'm going to define my variable. I'm going to say P is the cost of 1 pretzel. And why don't we use S? I mean, you could use X and Y too if you want. Cost of 1 soda. So for Samantha's equation, it's pretty easy. 3 pretzels, 3 times what they cost, plus 4 times the number of sodas, equals $11.25. So 3P plus 4S equals $11.25. All right. So let's look at Raza here. Went to the same stand and bought 5 pretzels and 2 sodas, and that was a total of $8.25. All right. So 5 pretzels plus 2 sodas equals $8.25. All right, now let's look at our methods. Graphing, we'd have to solve, we should have used X and Y if we wanted to use graphing. And we're going to be dealing with decimals, so you wouldn't see it anyways. You could use substitution, but it doesn't say S or P equals. So the easiest would be elimination from yesterday. So remember, for that, we need to make it so one of the variables will be eliminated. So we multiply the top by the beginning number in the bottom. So that would give us 15P plus 20S, right? 5 times 3, 5 times 4, 5 times 11.25. Let's throw it in the calculator. 5 times 11.25. 56.25. Now, all you're doing is you're altering the equation. You're not changing the value, so that way we can make something cancel. All right, now the other part of this, we multiplied the top by the beginning number in the bottom. We need to create its opposite down here. So we multiply the bottom by the opposite of the beginning number. Because if we just multiplied by 3, it'd be 15p, and those wouldn't cancel. So we multiply the bottom by the opposite of the top. So negative 3 times 5p would be negative 15p. Negative 3 times 2s would be negative 6s. And negative 3 times 825 negative 3 times 8.25 gives us negative 2475. So by doing that, what we did is we created equations that have the same value as the others, but now we can add them together. And when we do, these are eliminated. 15p plus negative 15p. 20s minus 6s would be 14s equals 56.25 minus 24.75, or think of it as adding a negative. I already have those numbers in there if you just go up and hit enter. So that plus that, 31.5 or 3150. Divide by 14. So S equals, that means we're finding out the cost of a soda right now. Can just hit divided by 14. 2.25. That's reasonable. Got a negative number, wouldn't be a good thing. So a soda costs $2.25. All right, so now if you know how much a soda costs, you can use substitution to figure out what each pretzel is. And you can use either the top or bottom, it doesn't matter. If you want to use the top, 3 pretzels plus 4 sodas at $2.25 each instead of S, because we know the cost now, equals $11.25. So if they bought 4 sodas at $2.25 each, that $2.25 is already in the calculator. You can just hit times 4. They spent $9 on sodas. So 3p plus 9 equals $11.25. We'll subtract the 9 from both sides. So 3p equals $2.25. Divide by 3. Or you could just do, $11.25 minus 9. If you want to check it in your calculator, divided by 3. That means that each pretzel is 75 cents. Okay? You would have been guessing quite a while trying to figure out those values. All right, let's do another one. Juanita and Keenan own a camping supply store and just put in an order for flashlights and sleeping bags. I think those will be our 2 variables. I'm going to highlight them now while we're at it. So flashlights and sleeping bags. The number of flashlights was 5 times the number of sleeping bags. Okay? The flashlights cost $12 each, and the sleeping bags cost $45 each. The total cost for the flashlights and sleeping bags was $1,785. Write and solve a system of equations, which means 2, to determine how many flashlights and how many sleeping bags. So that's what we're looking for. So that's where we're going to start with our variables. Don't get overwhelmed off the bat. So we can use, F and S. We can use X and Y. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to use. Let's use X and Y. So X equals the number of flashlights and Y can equal the number of sleeping bags. Okay, so let's go back up. Right here is important. The number of flashlights was. The number of flashlights equals. So flashlights, which is X, equals 5 times the number of sleeping bags. Well, sleeping bags is y. 5 times y. Well, that's not bad. Flashlights cost 12 each. Sleeping bags cost 45 each. The total cost was $17.85. We don't know how many of each there were. So flashlights is $12 and flashlights is X. So 12X plus the sleeping bags. Well, sleeping bags are 45 each and we're using Y to represent them. 45 times Y equals the total cost of $1,785. There's your system of equations, your two equations. So again, flashlights equal 5 times the number of sleeping bags. The cost of a flashlight is $12, so 12 times the number of flashlights plus 45 times the number of sleeping bags equals the total. Now for this one, it wouldn't make sense to do elimination because we don't have a constant. It would be 0, which would make it kind of tricky. But what we do have is X is equal to 5Y. So we can use substitution. So wherever you see an X down here, you can replace it with 5Y, and that will make it so you're just dealing with one variable. So that's what I'm going to do. If X is equal to 5Y, again, it's kind of like using 4 quarters instead of $1. Instead of 12 times X, I'm going to do 12 times 5Y plus 45Y equals 1,800 or 1,785. All right, so let's just multiply and see what happens. We have 12 times 5 should be 60Y plus 45Y equals 1,785. 105Y equals 1,785. Divide by 105. It's actually not that hard of a question if you're comfortable with that. So again, we did 12 times 5 to get our 60Y. And then 60 plus 45, we added our y's together, 105 y's. 1,785 divided by the 105 to solve. That means y is 17. Y was the number of sleeping bags. So there's 17 sleeping bags. Okay, now let's go back up. If we want to figure out how many flashlights, you can plug 17 into either equation, but I'm going to go with the top one. Look how much easier that looks. X equals 5 times Y. Well, you just found Y was 17. So the number of flashlights is going to be 5 times 17. Throw it into your calculator. 85. So there's 85 flashlights. Again, take a really long time to guess that. But you can see where substitution would be easy for that. All right, let's look at one last example here. Mo's farm stand sold a total of 165 pounds of apples and peaches. She sold apples for $1.75 per pound and peaches for $2.50 per pound. She made a total of $337.50. Write and solve the system to find out how many pounds of peaches. Okay. Well, we're dealing with apples and peaches, so I'm going to use A for the pounds of apples, and P can be the pounds of peaches. Now, the money, basically you're dealing with the number of pounds and the amount of money. Let's start with the money. Apples are $1.75, so $1.75A plus the peaches are $2.50. $2.50 times the number of peaches equals the total amount that she made. Now, the other part of this comes from actual pounds. See how it says total of 165 pounds? Well, we don't know how many pounds of apples or peaches. So we'll just say A plus P has to equal 165. So you have one for the cost and one for the number of pounds. Keep them separate. All right, so if we multiply the top by 1, because everything's lined up, and the bottom by the opposite of the top, negative 1.75, right? Multiply the top by the lead coefficient in the bottom by the lead coefficient in the top. Well, the top will be easy. You multiply that whole thing by 1, it's just going to stay as 1.75a plus 2.50 or 2.5p equals 337.50. Multiply here, negative 1.75a, good, that'll cancel. Negative 1.7 times p, negative 1.75p equals negative 1.75 times 165. I'll have to put that in my calculator. Negative 1.75 times 165, negative 288.75. It's all the same steps. You're just using bigger numbers and decimals. All right, so now we're going to use elimination. When we do, the apples cancel. 250 plus 1.75, or negative 1.75, excuse me, 0.75p equals 337.5 plus negative 288.75, 48.75. Divide by 0.75. Exciting stuff, I know. 65. So there's 65 pounds of peaches. It says, how many pounds of peaches? It doesn't even ask us for apples, so we don't even have to plug back in. If it did, we could plug it in for p and solve. But and if you look up here, if there's 165 pounds total, that means there's 100 pounds of apples. So there's 65 pounds of peaches, and you're done. So your last homework out of this packet, just a couple practice questions. Use the notes to help you along, just the 2. I'll put up a homework video walking you through it, and then we'll be done. So if you have questions, stop by the math lab, and I'd be happy to help. Have a great day.